Welcome, Anna and Helen, to Archives Wigan and Lee. I know that you've visited us a number of times before, but today you're going to tell us a little bit about the work that you do and the inspiration behind that. And I'm just wondering if you could describe yourselves as artists and also the work that you do.
Do you want to go?
Well, I suppose together we've been collaborating for about 8 years, maybe now. Oh, 6 years, six years, something like that now. And we kind of came together through an interest in history, politics and local history as well. And actually came together in the archives.
Yeah, in the archives. We actually met in the archives. I think another thing as well was just the fact that we're both from Lee, and we hadn't known each other when we were growing up. We should have done, but we didn't. So we also had this bond over the local element as well, like our kind of like haunts and the places that we've been to, that interest in the community here.
So like when we first met each other through an arts development programme in Wigan.
That was through the Turnpike, I think, wasn't it?
It was actually through the libraries.
It was through the libraries, yeah. So it was Imago, and that was in 2018. And we just kind of, I think we got to know each other as artists and decided that we'd love to do something in Lee, about Lee. And that kind of has developed our practice together, really.
And I suppose as individual artists, like my practice is generally history related, it's research led. I often do kind of like installations and sculptures, kind of around folk customs and the things and activities that bring people together. And Helen's individual practice is...
Yeah, mine is more materials based, more textiles, communal making, working with groups, and politics as well. So yeah, there's
a perfect
combined
merging that we can kind of like develop in our kind of like group practice.
Yeah.
And so you've talked a little bit about how running through both of your works is a reference to things like social history, politics, and I'm wondering kind of where you go to for inspiration for the work that you do. Kind of what do you draw on when you're thinking about creating a new piece?
So a lot of the ways that we've kind of come across things that have been strangely happenstance in terms of like where we've ended up going. We've done things like we're visiting like the People's History Museum in Manchester, coming to the archives and the library as well. We've seen history talks like Yvonne Eckersley, and we've seen other history talks like by outside lecturers coming to the local archives and history sessions as well. And then also from that doing reading online, but a lot of our triggers have come actually directly from historical sources or historians who've written pieces.
It's definitely a starting point. Is building this kind of research element in certain periods of time that we both are kind of interested in, specifically sort of 18th, 19th century. Local history, sort of northwest England, Lancashire specifically, but so you're kind of building up this knowledge bank through visiting the archives, visiting different libraries, and like you say, going to talks, and then you start to sort of pick up on a bit of detail, and it's great to be part of these communities as well, so that we can, speak to Yvonne about things. Yvonne's done some talks for us in the past as well, and so it's about sharing those starting points.
Pass Forward as well is a great source.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, just taking these little elements and then how we combine them and where we see them being relevant to today has been a big part. So the fact that both our parents are still in Lee, we walk around Lee, we come to Lee a lot. Yeah. We come to, well, obviously I live in Wigan and you live in Manchester, so we also just obviously in our day-to-day lives, what we experience. And then our general interests, which are kind of bringing people together, giving people senses of empowerment. So those interests is a general thing, then pulling those strings from the historical research, and then we kind of jump off from that.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's really interesting, and I think just bringing in your most recent collaboration, your exhibition piece that you had in the Turnpike, which was, I think, is it Progress with Light Steps?
Yes.
Which I loved. Really enjoyed that. And it's very clear from that piece that there's it reflects what we've talked about previously, really, the social history of the area, but also I think that community collaboration. And I'm wondering what the inspiration was behind that particular piece.
Well, one of the inspirations was the stained glass windows here in the town hall. You talk a bit more about the windows.
So there was an interesting. So we applied to do that project, and one of the kind of key things was this idea of a new heritage. And obviously, we're really fascinated by our heritage. So it threw this place straight into our sort of like purview, because we thought heritage is kind of like writ large in those windows, and then also particularly in the meeting chamber, the things that people had felt was important. So it included things like commerce and education, but a big one obviously was mining.
It was industry.
And these things aren't obviously part of what Lee is today. So for us it was like, how do we build a new heritage that recognises this old heritage? And there's no better place than Bickershaw.
Yeah.
And the future building that Bickershaw and Country Park is now on the back of this old colliery. So we had this beautiful window as our kind of like inspirational starting point, and then a specific site that was perfect to describe renewal from this old heritage to what could be a new heritage.
And physical renewal and physical healing of a land, and a town that's been through a hell of a lot of changes and been scarred from that as well. So one of the things that we always do as part of projects is to bring people along with us in that research, or in that in those first stages of working out what we want to talk about, because it's not really our opinions in a lot of ways. It's how people feel about things, and that's what we want to get across in our work. So we started we did a research walk in Bickershaw, and that was a guided walk with Dave Wilson from the Leon Ornithological Society, and it was great. It was a really wintry day, and we just took from so many elements of the walk as well. So the experience of the walk together, what connected people to the land, what connected people to that history.
And we were asking that question, like, can this new landscape, this renewed landscape, this healing landscape, kind of fulfill something that mining once did for the town? You know, it's not got the, it's not got the economic necessarily, but could it? Could it in some way, in a slightly different format, answer some of the losses the loss of the mining industry gave us? Because obviously, like Helen said, like the town was scarred, and people perhaps don't have the same types of things that people gather around or construct an identity around. So can this landscape answer that call? Do people feel this is a site of pride, a site of something they want to show off, they want to explore more, they want to bring people to, and feel that this is Lee? Lee is a site of renewal and healing, or not. Exactly. With the question was there, rather than sort of even us answering it necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, people answered it.
It was a discussion point, and then from there we did some further work on that with people, and the idea of stained glass windows kind of felt like a vehicle by which we could put all those thoughts and ideas and kind of monumentalize those feelings into. So the finished piece was not so much this is how we feel about Lee, but it kind of posed questions, and it offered suggestions.
Well, I think it was a really interesting project, and I think that certainly from talking to people that came in to look at the piece at the Turnpike, it generated a lot of discussion, and it generated a lot of interest in the sources that you'd used in terms of physical sources like the windows and the heraldry and the crest, but it also generated a lot of discussion about post-industrial landscape, and the regeneration of areas, and the question of the importance of nature in that. So from listening to people, I think that your art was really successful in having bringing that through.
Yeah,
so,
that's really exciting.
Yeah, it was great.
It was surprising to us, I think, how many people were coming on those walks and how many people don't know what's going on down at Bickershaw. You know, like I think that kind of knowledge sharing. Yeah. You can come here too. You can come with us. You can go on your own. You know, like to sort of have that little reminder as well, just as an aside as part of that project. So the people who were involved added more and more and developed it. But also for other people, it was like for us there was a little bit of things like, we want people to know that there is this renewal happening. Yeah, exactly.
And also, you know, the information that people shared as well, and the people that were really new to the area who had no idea about it as well. So like learning from the off, you know, that this is the history of that site, and it is a place where you can explore. And other sites that people talked about as well. So people were doing these kind of interesting walks in different areas that maybe not so known about, but all having a similar history and legacy. Yeah.
And there's those little details in the sites as well, like the specific plants that are eating away at the poisonous like metals in the ground, and those little moments of like regeneration that are happening with these tiny little incidental plants that you could easily just step on and you wouldn't realise, you know, what's happening. Having that focus and talking to people about that, and people really wanted to highlight these things because these were really exciting
moments.
Exciting moments, and something which could just be a walk where you just kind of walk ahead and it feels quite nice and that's absolutely fine, but actually don't realise what's going on.
There's a lot of detail in them, and that sort of invitation to look at things as well, to look and notice, and share that as well, which is something that
it's like look, notice, share. It's like a big part of what we want to help to kind of develop with people and get people to do.
No, thank you, and certainly in noticing and sharing, you very kindly offered to display the piece in the town hall windows for us. So hopefully that'll be coming on soon. Yeah. And also you're continuing the project as well. This isn't an end to that project. You're actually going to be continuing that moving forward, aren't you?
Yeah. We've got a lot of plans for what we'd like to do with this. It's kind of part of a bigger piece of work that is a collaborative.
It's like an ongoing collaborative project that has many different.
Yeah, it's not even a project in a way. It's just like this
sort of wieldy thing that we're kind of doing, which is kind of overarching the Botanical Society. So we've been taking inspiration from working class botanists from the 18th and 19th centuries and how they worked together, how they collaborated with each other, how they shared, like they kind of did peer learning, so they would read together in pubs, and those who couldn't read would get read to. So we're not kind of pitching ourselves as botanists, but we're pitching ourselves as kind of people who are taking on their methodologies of walking and learning, and we're learning with the people that we work with. So
it's a peer kind of situation, and it is about essentially it's about through observing and sharing and documenting things that you are sort of developing a love of the land underneath your feet, and hopefully like a feeling of ownership, a sense of having a stake in that land, and therefore what happens to it. So it's cultivating a love for those spaces.
Because like when you start noticing like you haven't seen as many butterflies in 1 year in your garden to the next, but not everyone has a garden, or not everyone's looking at their garden, or whatever you do. So it's like kind of, but you don't recognise those changes when you aren't looking.
Yeah.
So it feels like things are passing us by when there's actually quite grave activities happening on the sort of like on the global scale and locally,
and without looking at
it and then feeling that ownership over that space, and not ownership like that's just yours, but you know, it's like a shared ownership and staking it. Then it's like that's when people start to say, well, actually I want things to be done better. So you can ask the council to not mow an area, or you can ask I don't know, you can ask for sort of like a change in fuel, or you can start thinking about, you know, is there some way that my community can change its energy source or whatever. These questions can be asked when you start to feel that, oh, I've seen what's happening.
Yeah, and I have a vested interest and like interest in how we do that, how we do that through ritual, how we do that through learning about historical people or practices.
Well, it's really exciting for us for the piece to come back to the town hall, because the town hall now represents something slightly different for the community. It's this open space. It's not kind of like, you know, the kind of lofty things who kind of make decisions, but this is still that space. It's where things have happened, where decisions have been made for the town, but now it's open to people to come and to see their heritage and to see history, and for us to sort of be in the window. So we're kind of bringing those stained glass things. You know, maybe one day we'll replace one of those. But it's nice that we're actually that new heritage is being put back into the building, where it's kind of taken inspiration from, but it's, you know, 2024 and not in 1905.
So it's bringing it home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bringing it home.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today and for sharing, you know, your inspirations and also your knowledge and experience as well in translating that for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.